Welcome everyone to Travel Dash, one of the craziest trips we'll have ever done for this channel. We are starting in San Diego, California and road tripping up to the Canadian Rockies and back. It's going to be a wild ride. We're starting here today in the eastern Sierra Nevada mountains, which is a bucket list spot for me for hiking. It absolutely looks amazing. And the eastern slopes of these mountains are super dry because the mountains take up so much of that moisture. And so you can see around us, it just looks like a wasteland, but
it's also super volcanic, which is really cool, which is actually something we're going to do later in this trip, go up to Lassen Volcanic. So yeah, there's gonna be actually 11 national parks in this trip, which is just crazy. So I'm unbelievably hyped. It probably will be the best hiking trip me and Mark ever do for like the foreseeable future. So we've been planning this for over a year now and I just can't wait to get this going. So yep, first spot, Fossil Falls.
And Evan, can you believe it's 99 degrees out here?
Yeah, that's what's so weird. We were driving up here, you just go through the desert, like we're not far from Death Valley, and then suddenly you get to like alpine areas in Eastern Sierra, like Yosemite's just the other side of these mountains over here. It's just crazy to be in the desert, being 99 degrees, and then we're gonna be cold probably later this trip.
To touch on the Sierra Nevada a bit further, this is a major mountain range primarily running along the eastern edge of California for about 400 miles. The western side is far more visited with protected areas such as Yosemite, Sequoia, and Kings Canyon National Parks. But in many ways, the eastern side might be even better, with far less visitors and taller mountains on average, including Mount Whitney, the highest point in the lower 48 states. The majority of this part of the Sierras lie within the border of Inyo National Forest, which I'd wanted to visit for years because I believed it could be one of the best national forests in America. By the time you're done watching this video, I think you'll agree with that prediction. This place is amazing, and it's quite diverse too. In general, this is a drier mountain range relative to others, particularly on its eastern slopes, so it kind of blows your mind that places like this are located so close to places like this. Our first stop, Fossil Falls, is a unique geological feature out in the desert adjacent to the southern extent of the Sierra Nevada where it's notably drier than it gets even just a dozen miles north. Accessed by a short non-paved road and a flat half-a-mile trail, Fossil Falls is surreal and adequately demonstrates the natural diversity in Central California alone, not to mention the rest of the state. It feels like you're on an extraterrestrial planet, with the dry rock and shrubs making up the landscape and the cinder cone out in the distance as well.
Fossil Falls, what we're looking at right now, it used to be a waterfall, and this is just the remnants of it, and it's really amazing. I wasn't expecting all this volcanic rock. There's a cinder cone nearby. It's really cool, and I wasn't even going to include it in the video because we're still 45 to 50 minutes away from everything else we're going to be doing today.
Yeah, it's really neat too. The cinder cone that's over there as well with the backdrop of the Sierra. This is really cool. It's just a super unique spot.
Heading northbound, we then made our way an hour to the Alabama Hills.
You guys see that? 100 degrees, and if I pan up, there is snow. Oh my gosh.
Protected as a national scenic area, the Alabama Hills are a range of desolate hills and rock formations found just west of the town of Lone Pine, also serving as a gateway to Mount Whitney by a treacherous 21-mile hike.
We've made it to the Alabama Hills National Scenic Area, which is probably the only spot we're visiting in the Eastern Sierra I've personally been to. This is really cool because you have all these rocks around us. You can see Mount Whitney, the highest point in the contiguous United States, from here.
Yeah, I'm so excited for this. It's just so cool because you got like this Joshua Tree type scenery, but then in the background you have the Eastern Sierra, and it's just unbelievable. Being able to see Mount Whitney is so cool.
Cutting through the Alabama Hills is Movie Road, which gets its name because of the fact that it's been used in more than 400 films and 1,000 commercials. And I don't blame these production companies for seeking this place out because its backdrop is unreal. I can't think of another spot that better showcases California's variety in landscapes, as the switch between dry desert and high alpine seems to happen almost instantly. Now, most of the Alabama Hills are treated like it's a wilderness area, a free-for-all if you will, where off the Movie Road you go off-route to find interesting rock features like arches and natural bridges. Yep, that's right, the Alabama Hills has tons of stuff like that, actually one of the highest concentrations in America, if you can believe it. To increase accessibility to see them, there was a single trail built that takes visitors to Mobius Arch. This is a little over half-a-mile round trip and mostly flat, though there are some gradual uphill portions sprinkled in. While this isn't the biggest arch you'll ever see at just 6.5 feet tall, Mobius Arch is still up there as one of my favorites since it perfectly frames Mount Whitney in the background. I just think it's so crazy that you can be at this rock formation 4,600 feet above sea level and then look up at a mountain 10,000 feet higher. It's awesome. And on top of that, this is one of those arches that you can climb around, through, even over, contributing so much to its interactivity. Once we wrapped up, we continued along Movie Road, stopping at a few pull-offs which I would highly recommend because the views out here are otherworldly. I don't rank the Alabama Hills especially high as an outdoor destination because for someone like me there isn't a ton to do, but I can certainly acknowledge how scenic it is and that it's the best spot there is to appreciate base views of Mount Whitney and its surrounding mountains. Next came the 2-hour drive to what for me was uncharted territory, a place I'd never been before, and that would be the geothermal region of the eastern Sierra Nevada. More specifically, Hot Creek Geological Site and its nearby thermal baths, which exist as a result of magma near the surface boiling groundwater, similar to Yellowstone National Park or Lassen Volcanic National Park in the same state. It's worth noting that there are a few miles of non-paved road that you'll have to traverse to get to Hot Creek, and then another few to reach the hot springs, but from our experience they were all nicely maintained. Besides, we were so hyped to see our first geothermal features of the trip that we didn't exactly care anyways.
Oh!
Yeah, this is actually my first time seeing like active geothermal areas, so I'm so excited for this.
This already looks so cool, and everything's a lot greener over here too. It's still shrubbery-like, but a lot greener.
Straight from the parking lot, you'll be able to enjoy a viewpoint which overlooks variously colored pools situated along Hot Creek. And while it is amazing, I'd personally suggest walking down to the pools themselves for a variety of reasons. One, the differing perspectives of Hot Creek are beautiful, especially this one here which is more of a straightaway, highlighting the trajectory of the water as it snakes its way through a canyon. Plus, the mountains in the back are simply mesmerizing, as at this point they've gotten quite a bit greener than in the south. 2, by getting up close with the bubbling pools, you really get to immerse yourself into the environment, whether it be from admiring intricate details and color, or feeling the warmth of the steam coming off of those bodies of water.
That is awesome. Like, there's no other words for it.
I've been wanting to see geothermal stuff for forever.
This is your first time seeing geothermal activity? Like,
I know,
what?
it's so cool. It just, oh man, it blew my mind. It's just such a neat thing to smell, and just the way the rocks look, and seeing this spring over here. Oh, this was really neat.
Well, it doesn't smell so different from being around you all the time.
Well,
Anyways, there are a whole bunch of hot springs in this area for you to soak your body in. The one we chose was Wild Willie's, which I'd heard was one of the better ones, but of course that also comes with the consequence of high visitation. When we got there, we struggled to find parking for the first time that day, and that's despite the fact that you have to hike almost a mile to actually reach the springs themselves. I wasn't complaining though, this is actually a really nice walk along an elevated boardwalk, and there's a sizable lake with more of those mountains in the background if you're looking for stuff to look at.
Well, we're checking out one of the local hot springs. That should be really cool. Not sure if we're gonna swim or not. For one, it's already pretty warm. 2, the entire state of California decided to show up, and there was even a school bus. Like, what?
Now look, I won't pretend like Wild Willie's wasn't incredibly busy, but we did manage to get lucky, as we had a nice warm pool to ourselves for some time. Compared to other hot springs I've been to, I'd put this one somewhere in the middle, as it's not as big and the color not as colorful as some others, but the surrounding landscape is unmistakably beautiful and makes up for that completely.
That hot spring was really cool. It's not the most impressive hot spring I've ever been to, but I will say it's one of the best views from a hot spring that I have seen. The mountains in the backdrop of the Eastern Sierra are gorgeous, man.
Alas, before we actually head into the mountains for the first time this video, I also wanted to mention that you've got Crowley Lake nearby, which is naturally very significant due to the stone column's position on its eastern side. These were formed by steam-induced fracturing and mineral cementation in volcanic ash deposits, so it also ties into the region's geothermal paths, which I think is really cool. We actually did attempt to reach these by hiking roughly 4 miles, but the access road to get to the trailhead was closed for some unknown reason, meaning we unfortunately had to skip it. So instead, concluding day 1 in the Eastern Sierra, we squeezed in a visit to the nearby Convict Lake, hoping for good lighting. Sadly, that isn't really what we got, as the sun had set behind the lake's mountainous backdrop by then, but nevertheless, what a spot Convict Lake is. For one, I just think it's so cool that you can drive right up to it, and 2, it's really the first time we'd see that granite up close and personal, which the majority of the Sierra Nevada mountains are composed of. We spent the remainder of the day driving an hour south, back the way we came actually, because we intentionally bypassed the trailhead for one of 3 major hikes planned this trip that would take us deep into these mountains and into the wilderness. Because these are so long and challenging, and because parking can be pretty competitive, you've got to get to these really early in the morning, which simply wasn't an option on day 1, seeing as we had to drive 5.5 hours from my home base of San Diego. But believe me, if you've been impressed by this video so far, just wait, you have not seen nothing yet.
Oh boy, we were up bright and early for probably one of the more difficult hikes that we've ever done, and one of the most popular hikes in the Eastern Sierra, and that's to Big Pine Lake. So we're going to be checking out the first and second lake. This is going to be absolutely incredible. I've seen lots of pictures, and it will blow your mind.
all right, so we're starting here and kind of keep following all of the creek all the way till we get to the first lake and the second lake. And the second lake's the main highlight of the trail. You can continue on, but that requires like a 15-16 mile hike, which is more of a backpacking trip. So we're just doing a day hike to second lake, which is the most popular lake, and then coming back. I'm so excited for this. I can't wait. This is one of my most anticipated hikes of the entire trip. So yeah, let's get this started.
Big Pine Lake's trail to first and second lake alone is 9.5 miles with 2,358 feet of elevation gain. Easily one of the most challenging day hikes I've ever been on if you look strictly at the numbers. So it should come as no surprise that we didn't want to trek any further and hit the remaining lakes, especially since, as Evan said, Second Lake really is the highlight of this entire thing. But I will say this, because of how evenly dispersed all of that uphill is, this by no means is one of the hardest hikes I've completed. I actually think its difficulty is probably over-exaggerated on the internet, though I don't think it's feasible to call it moderate since we were out and about for about 5 hours. Anyways, to briefly run through the hike, you spend the first portion maneuvering along Big Pine Creek as it rushes along the mountain's foothills. There's a few cascades and small waterfalls, but nothing too crazy before the trees open up to a variety of the peaks that you're heading towards. Admittedly, I didn't think the mountain scenery or variety in views at large were anything to shout at. My favorite section by far were these switchbacks that head up and through this meadow that was absolutely gorgeous and littered with wildflowers. Then the next point of interest is most likely the midway point of the hike when you cross into the John Muir Wilderness, a first in this video and something all 3 major trails share in common. You'll meet back up with Big Pine Creek as it transitions into a huge mountainside waterfall, which is also visible from the aforementioned switchbacks if you were paying close attention on those. The rest of the way is more same old, though you've got a nice blend of walking through forest and expansive open areas to keep things from getting too boring. I'm also willing to admit that the mountains do start to get better as you near our turnaround point, particularly the distant Temple Crag, which actually forms the backdrop to Second Lake. But let's not jump the gun, as First Lake is stunning in its own right, a great appetizer for things to come.
Oh man, we got to First Lake. That's so cool. The color on that is not exaggerated in the video. It is actually that green, I suppose, is how you describe it as.
Yeah, I wouldn't really say turquoise. It's not like some of the alpine lakes you see they're like that bright blue. It's more of like that emerald green color, which is still really unique and really cool.
And overall, this hike, while very long, wasn't as challenging as I expected, so I'm very satisfied.
I absolutely loved First Lake for its hypnotizing color. It is beautiful for sure, but it doesn't completely do it for me like some other alpine lakes, mainly because it lacks the imposing backdrop and there's an awful lot of trees blocking the view as well. I'd also be lying if I told you Second Lake didn't completely put it to shame. Not only is it far bigger, but it's got one of the best backdrops to any alpine lake I've seen. It's almost completely surrounded by mountains, and at least when we visited, just the perfect amount of snow to complement the scene. And with that same emerald color possessed by First Lake, if not a little more vibrant, it's hard to imagine what, if anything, could make Second Lake even more impressive than it already is.
Ridiculous, dude.
It's so beautiful.
I would certainly put Second Lake up there as one of my all-time favorite alpine lakes ever, and also possibly our favorite viewpoint in the eastern Sierra Nevada. But I wouldn't put the trail in its entirety on that same level. While parts of it were extremely pleasant, the world-class alpine scenery this mountain range is well known for only seemed to be getting started by the time we got to Second Lake, and I'm sure going to Third Lake and beyond could have helped with that, but for reasons previously stated, we weren't trying to kill our legs, especially not on the second day of the trip, and in a region where there's easier hikes that are even more engaging than this one. Now, since we had plenty of time left over before sundown, perhaps more than we originally expected, we took the opportunity to hit a bunch of roadside lakes like Convict Lake, for example. There's actually quite a few others that you can also drive up to if that's more your speed. This really became our formula while in the Eastern Sierra, as we'd complete one monster hike and then do easy stuff the whole rest of the day while there was daylight still. So an hour north of the Big Pine Lakes trailhead was South Lake, and this was really kind of amazing for what it is. Obviously, these ones that you can drive up to lack the color of the ones higher and deeper into the mountains, but what stood out about South Lake was its outstanding mountain backdrop. All of the snow up there was breathtaking, and it was also interesting that this one had small islands in the middle of it. Personally, I would take it over Convict Lake and the next one on our list, but that's not to overshadow Sabrina Lake either. This one is arguably even more accessible and has many of the same characteristics, though it's got a higher concentration of smaller islands entirely comprised of granite, and the best of the mountains here are partially blocked by hills, unfortunately.
Just found a couple lakes. We started with South Lake, then came over to Sabrina Lake, and these are incredible, and I can't believe how easily accessible they are.
Yeah, I do think South Lake's slightly better, but both Sabrina and South Lake are absolutely worth a stop, and they're pretty easy to get to too, unlike some of the other alpine lakes in this area.
We then indulge in an exceptional night of sleep, which is imperative when you're hiking this much in such a short time frame.
We're about to start our next big hike in the Eastern Sierra. This is the Little Lakes Valley Trail. A little bit shorter and less strenuous than yesterday, but still a behemoth for sure, over 7 miles. We got our breakfast this morning, and we are starting out in an absolutely beautiful location along this creek.
All right, so we're starting here at the parking lot, and we're gonna go down and stop by a bunch of different lakes on the way down, all the way until we get to Gem Lakes down here. I'm very excited for this. There's so many different alpine lakes in this trail, and Gem Lakes in particular is just absolutely beautiful, so I can't wait to go finally see it.
For whatever reason, the Little Lakes Valley Trail is probably my least anticipated big hike in the Eastern Sierra, but to be fair, I've never been particularly knowledgeable about the region, so Evan did most of the planning for this leg of the trip. What we're looking at here is a 7.2 mile trail with just over 1,000 feet of elevation gain. Definitely simpler than yesterday's adventure, and All Trails does classify it as moderate, which I would actually agree with. A big part of the reason why is because there is not a dull moment so long as you're in Little Lakes Valley. Our hike passed by at least 7 named lakes, and the crazy thing is, virtually all of these were superb for one reason or another. And for the distance without lakes, there is almost always a creek inside or a meadow or some other form of eye candy. That's without mentioning that there are some unbelievable mountains present for the entire length of the hike, and the perspectives you get do change drastically as you progress along the trail. Clearly, I have a lot of good things to say about this one, so let's delve in. From the start, you'll meet with Rock Creek and won't really lose sight of it until the very end. And a big difference with this hike, contrary to Big Pine Lakes, is you enter the John Muir Wilderness area almost immediately, and it's evident as to why when you have constant views like this. Mammoth Lake is the first lake you come across, and it is one hell of an introduction to what you can expect throughout Little Lakes Valley. I expected things to build up as you proceed into the mountains, but nope, it is astounding from the get-go. Not only is there absolutely glamorous color content and one hell of a backdrop, but I also thought it was cool how high over this one you are. That not only allows the color to pop, but it's also just something that differentiates Mammoth Lake from the others. From here, a large meadow starts to form around the trail, and this is a reoccurring theme through much of the hike as there are beautiful flowers and grasses all over Little Lakes Valley. Then Marsh Lake is the smallest official lake en route, but it is still awesome because, as its name suggests, the tall grasses make it appear as though it is in a marsh. And those distant mountains start to feel increasingly imposing, which makes up for the lack of any unique color in the water here. Soon after, you'll come up on Heart Lake, which is very similar, though I like how the trail makes its way around its perimeter so you get to appreciate it from many angles. And I also loved all the different streams that feed into the lake too. There's actually some fun bridges that pass over these. Box Lake is amazing because, as its name suggests, it's kind of boxed in by mountains. It also kind of reminds me of the first lake we saw, since you're elevated pretty high up and get to overlook the thing. Then before coming up on what I assume to be the largest of all the lakes, I have to commend the next portion of the trail not only because the nature around you is as good as it gets, but also there are a few water crossings that only add to the fun of things rather than take away from the experience in any capacity. You shouldn't even have to get your feet wet, it's just there to spice things up a bit. And then comes Long Lake, which is easily one of the highlights of the entire hike. I adore this part since you begin down at its base and then get to make your way up its side, granting some higher vantages that allow the color to come out more. The mountains at its side may not be the tallest in the world, but do make it feel like you're in a canyon of sorts. And that backdrop, man, that is something truly special. Speaking of which, those peaks, which at the beginning of the hike felt so unbelievably far, now feel like they're right at your fingertips. You'll have the option to take a short spur trail to tack on an additional lake, which I'd certainly recommend because I found it to be one of the better ones. Chickenfoot Lake might just be the biggest of them all if not for Long Lake, and while I wouldn't rank it quite as high, I would give it the edge for color because that emerald green is distinct to say the least. As you near the end of the trail, you'll be hit by the most elevation gain and probably also the least to look at of any of these sections. It's not bad design by any means, it just feels like it's the only point that's just trying to get you from point A to point B. But that point B is out of this world. Gem Lakes is crazy. It is unlike any other lake you'll see on this hike and that we saw in the eastern Sierra Nevada. I cannot think of many instances in nature where I've seen water this see-through. It is insurmountable. The sheer amount of snow behind it was also striking, and the lake is pretty big so you can walk all around it.
Genuinely, this hike has been so stupid the whole time. It's the most enjoyable alpine hike I think I've ever been on because it's engaging the entire way. Every single lake has been breathtaking, but Gem Lakes clearly stands out as the best. It's so see-through, the snow on the mountains around it is unbelievable. This is over the top, bro. This hike is amazing.
Yeah, just from the start, there's just so many different alpine lakes on the way. I mean, there's probably 6 or 7 different major alpine lakes that you go past, and all of them are really cool, but they don't have the clarity that Gem Lakes have. It's accurately named because it definitely looks like a gem, like an emerald or something like that. It's just so cool, so clear. The backdrop of the mountains, it's truly a special spot, and definitely probably maybe my favorite hike in the Eastern Sierra. We'll have to see, but yeah, absolutely amazing.
Since the Little Lakes Valley Trail isn't as difficult as the other major hikes in the area, we were left with quite a lot of time to explore more of the region. So we headed north past the geothermal stuff from day one, all the way until we hit the town of Mammoth Lakes, which is a popular tourist destination for skiing and snowboarding especially.
Alright, we've officially made it to the Mammoth area. This is a cool town that I've actually never experienced before, and there's lots of natural recreation around it as well. We're starting here at Minaret Vista.
We pretty much spent the entire rest of the day checking out the Mammoth area, and I'd say we got a good feel for it. Minaret Vista offers a breathtaking view of the Minarets, which are a sub-range of the Sierra Nevada mountains characterized by their particularly jagged peaks. At some point, I'd love to go hike among these mountains, but from this overlook alone, it's abundantly clear how prominent the Minarets are as they tower over Mammoth. And if you look the other way, you can actually see Mammoth Mountain, which was formed in a series of eruptions that ended 57,000 years ago, and to this day it still produces hazardous volcanic gases that kill trees. This is why its slopes are so exposed, making them sought after for skiers and snowboarders, hence the gondola and ski lifts present.
Minaret Vista was super cool, but you know what? It's hard not to focus on the fact that unfortunately we cannot visit Devil's Postpile National Monument this trip. It's down this road here. It's one of the most popular spots in the Eastern Sierra, and unfortunately it opens for the season in just a few days. We are just missing it, which sucks. If you go, check out the Postpile. Also check out Rainbow Falls. It's really awesome.
It is a shame that we had to miss Devil's Postpile National Monument this trip since we were banking on it being open in time, but on the bright side there was something nearby that sparked my excitement quite a bit, and that would be Mammoth Mountain Coaster at Wooley's Adventure Summit, which is actually operated by the same company who run the gondola and ski lifts on Mammoth Mountain.
All right, we are on the Mammoth Mountain Coaster in California, open in 2023. So it's a new ride. There's Mammoth Mountain back there.
A ride on the Mammoth Mountain Coaster is nearly $30 per person, which is crazy steep, but unfortunately I've kind of come to expect that from mountain coasters in America, and at least here there is a discount if you got someone to ride with. Still, I enjoyed the ride a lot since it is such a new iteration of this popular roller coaster type. It is remarkably smooth and interacts wonderfully within the terrain. My only gripe with it is its lack of airtime moments, as there's only a few instances towards the end of the layout. After this, we decided to check out the Inyo Craters Trail, which was only a little bit out of the way, but it is totally worth your time. This requires a short but smooth drive along a gravel road, followed by a 1.5-mile hike through the woods. But it is crazy once you get there and see the first of 2 craters making up the payoff of this hike. Why these exist is pretty self-explanatory. Eruptions took place, of course, but why they have these colorful pools of water is what makes these so incredibly unusual. The first one is kind of this turquoise color, and the second is a lot closer to black, though it can be a little bit tricky to see it with the forestry actually growing inside of that crater. Regardless, they were both amazing to see out here and completely unexpected.
Dude, this is like such a cool hidden gem spot. I actually loved the Inyo craters, thought this was so unique. That first crater, the color of the water was unbelievable, and the second one, while the color was not as special, the cliffs were really neat. So overall, I thought that was well worth a stop.
Yeah, it kind of blows your mind that something like this is out here. It's just really cool how both of these formed and how they're back to back to each other, and they both have lakes in them, and especially with like turquoise lakes too. It's just really cool. So yeah, really neat stop.
It's possible that you may have been curious why the town of Mammoth Lakes isn't just called Mammoth. Although it's typically referred to as the latter, there are actually 5 lakes situated within the town's boundaries, and they're all impeccably accessible with a complex network of roads and trails connecting them all together. The first one you come across upon entering the Mammoth Lakes Basin is Twin Lakes, which stands out for its uniqueness. As the name implies, it's basically 2 lakes split apart by a bridge, and you can actually cross that bridge, which is a really interesting perspective. On its far end is a waterfall known as Twin Falls, which flows directly into the lake, almost like a fairy tale. There's no way to get up to its base, but you can get a straightaway look from Upper Twin Road, and later on we find out how to get on top of it too. You'll drive up a steep hill to get to the other 4 lakes, and all of these are pretty equal in quality. For that reason, I'm not going to waste my time talking about each of them individually, with just one exception, and that is Horseshoe Lake. I think this was a contender for my favorite in the area because there's all this sand which has formed a beach around its perimeter. I thought that was really bizarre and different from all the other lakes in Mammoth. Another suggestion, which goes back to that upper view of Twin Falls I talked about, is when you park at Lake Mammy, cross the road and appreciate Twin Lakes from up top. Then once you're done, you can walk a short but steep trail down the side of the waterfall, but be very careful as it's a little sketchy and doesn't appear to be maintained. We turned around at its middle tier, but I appreciated the option for sure.
It was good to just tick off Mammoth Lakes from my to-do list. These are amazing and they take practically no effort to get to.
Yeah, all of them are really cool, and they all kind of look similar, but they also are very different from each other. They're just so accessible, so that's really cool.
Coincidentally, the trailhead to our third and final major hike happens to be located in the Mammoth Lakes Basin, so being here perfectly set us up for that next morning.
Oh boy, we got one more major hike here in the Eastern Sierra Mountains. This is Duck Pass, which has a ton of lakes, a lot like the hike we did yesterday, but Evan and I are both in agreement that this is going to be a challenge because our legs are not doing so hot.
Yeah, but this could be actually my most anticipated hike in Eastern Sierra, so I can't wait to go check this out and see the view up atop of Duck's Pass. All right, so we're starting here, and we're kind of working our way out, stopping by a bunch of different lakes. And here's Duck's Pass, where you get the famous view looking down the Barney Lake. And we're also going to make our way down over here to Duck Lake and Pico Lake.
The Duck Pass Trail to Pico Lake is one of the toughest day hikes I've ever been on, clocking in at more than 10 miles round trip with 2,155 feet of elevation gain. It feels like constant uphill the entire time, and there really isn't any break until you've crossed over Duck Pass. But to compensate, it is another rather engaging trail due to the sheer quantity of lakes present along the way. Not quite to the same extent as Little Lakes Valley, but I'll get to that momentarily. Straight from the jump, you'll have to navigate a whole bunch of switchbacks through the trees with little to nothing to look at, but you do enter the John Muir Wilderness during this section. Then you can take an optional spur trail to Arrowhead Lake, and this is really pretty, though nothing super special compared to what we'd seen thus far in the Eastern Sierra. Pretty nice color for sure, but just an okay surrounding relative to some of these others. And for whatever reason, this lake all the way until Barney Lake, so what's that, like a mile and a half, had so many gnats, which was really annoying. We didn't really have a problem with bugs on any of the other hikes, but it was just horrible on this one. The next main point of interest is going to be Skeleton Lake, which has a similarly pleasant bluish green color and an improved mountain backdrop for sure. And I loved this section that passes around and over it, as there was a whole lot of wildflowers that made for a wonderful photo opportunity with the lake in the background. Not much goes on for the next mile aside from a few chill water crossings, and I'll be honest, despite how nice some of the lakes had been up to this point, this whole stretch just felt like filler and I wasn't really enjoying it a ton. I'm sure a lot of that has to do with how tired I was from the past few days of nonstop craziness, but then things took a turn for the best once the trees opened up. This area with Barney Lake and Red Lake is heavenly and felt straight out of the Little Lakes Valley Trail. The meadow around these combined with the sheer quantity of flowers was excellent. Be sure to take it in because this next bit is going to be a real workout. Across the next mile, you're going to be gaining upwards of 800 feet of elevation gain along a mountainside. There were many snow patches when we visited in early July, so we did have to work around those on occasion, but I also had a good deal of fun with them, I'll be honest.
Oh, bullseye.
Though this portion of the hike was tough, the views looking out at Barney Lake and its corresponding valley, boxed in by mountains, was amazing. It felt like we'd come such a long way from the parking lot, like you just can't believe how high you are. But all of this is merely a warm-up for what you're about to see once you cross over Duck Pass. You get this unfathomable reveal of Duck Lake with an onslaught of mountain peaks everywhere around it. I could not believe my eyes. This felt like one of the signature views not only of the Eastern Sierra, but of our entire trip.
This hike has been kind of weird. A lot of it is a little bit of a slog, I'll be honest. But then you hop over the pass, and now I don't know what planet I'm on.
Yeah, up to like Barney Lake, it's just kind of in the woods and not that exciting. But once you get to Barney Lake and start going up the pass, it's unbelievable.
Those who choose to turn around here are more than welcome, as it's already been a tough as hell hike up to that point, but we figured, what the hell, we're here. We may as well tag on the extra mile to Piga Lake, which is actually hidden behind Duck Lake. Speaking of which, the trail design is great here as you maneuver around the left side of Duck Lake, revealing an incredible shade of turquoise. You've also got a ton more wildflower bloom around here, which was awesome too. Even though our legs were basically paralyzed by now, I couldn't help but smile because of where I was. This was a paradise if I've ever seen one. Eventually you hit a left turn as you come up on a creek, and from there you've only got a short walk to go before Piga Lake. We were the only ones here, so I think it's an overlooked spot. I'm not sure how popular it is to add this on as an extension to the trail, but I for one thought it was super worth it. It may not have anything on Duck Lake or even Barney Lake, but I was still mesmerized by the scene. After enjoying it for a little while longer, it was time to conquer the return trip back to the parking lot, and boy was this a grind. The only thing I was looking forward to was that it was downhill instead of uphill. Then to finally conclude the video, we would visit two more lakes just north of Mammoth Lakes, and one of these, June Lake, I'd heard so much about over the years. Both of these can be found right off Highway 395, and June Lake in particular just has this vibrant turquoise shade to it. An underrated way of seeing it is to pull off along the road that bypasses it whenever vehicles are absent because you get to overlook it, but admittedly it isn't the safest option in the world, so most people pay a small fee to access June Lake Beach and then take advantage of it by swimming or kayaking or something like that.
Swung by June Lake real quick. We actually went over to the campground so we could avoid the parking fee. Ran over here, grabbed a quick look, and now we're heading out because we were not about to pay to see this for 5 seconds. But this is actually a really remarkably beautiful beach.
After briefly glancing at June Lake, we then carried on to Mono Lake, which has become famous for its unusual pinnacle-like rock formations rising out of the water surface. We were pretty excited to see it, especially since it was free and so convenient to access, but unfortunately, it did not deliver at all. And I hate to end things on such a negative note, but Mono Lake honestly is kind of disgusting. For whatever reason, there was like an infestation of bugs here, like all of the black you see lining the perimeter are insects. And then as a result, it just smelled horrible, and keeping it real, I didn't even think the rock features were anything to shout at either, so not really impressed at all.
What a ride it's been. Wrapping up at Mono Lake here. The Eastern Sierra has been incredible. We've done some of the most challenging and beautiful hikes that I've ever experienced. Of the three, I think we have more or less the same thoughts and same rankings, but
Yeah, I think Little Lakes Valley is definitely the highlight.
For sure.
That blew both of us away. It's both of our like top 5, top 10 trail we've ever done. And then probably Ducks Pass, mainly just because like the final viewpoint was so good. And then finally was Big Pine Lakes, which has probably our favorite individual view, which is Second Lake of the entire Eastern Sierra. But I think that comes in third. But still, all 3 hikes are absolutely a must-do in this area.
and I think I have the exact same ranking myself for the same reasons. But yeah, thank you all so much for watching, and we will see you in the next one from Lake Tahoe. Peace out, guys.